Good afternoon, viewers, and good afternoon especially to those across the continent. Good afternoon, Togo, Rwanda, DRC, and especially to our comrades out in Zimbabwe. Welcome to this, our second session for this program. We'll be looking at issues that affect not only South Africa, but throughout the continent. We're looking today at the informalization of the economies. And we're going to ask, the question before us is, whether this is a sign of the strength or weakness of our economies. To discuss the motion before the group and to put it to the world is we have Mr. Mutau, who is going to be that the growing informalization of the economy is a sign of strength. Against the motion are Ms. Karina Chetty and Mr. Nduduzo Majozi. They're going to be arguing that, well, actually, these developments are a sign of the weakness of the economy. And without much further ado, we have Mr. Mutau to come up and present his arguments for the motion. Just a note to our viewers and the audience. With permission, we have one speaker who is for this. I'm assured that this is not a reflection whatsoever of the sentiments of the audience, but it's merely a fact of the strike which we have ongoing in South Africa at the moment. Thank you, Andres.
Thank you very much, Dr. Boyce. Good afternoon to everyone. We are arguing on informalization, and we're saying that informalization is a strength to the economy. When we think of informalization, we think of backwardness, barbaricness, and other bad things, negative connotations attached to it. But it's not like that. Informalization has been seen as a disaster to humanity for many years. But to our surprise, there's not been any clear solutions provided for it to go away or to be stopped. But we believe that for informalization not to go away is because its strengths weigh more than the negative connotations associated with it. Firstly, informalization creates employment. And with employment, I'm not going to look at it from a global perspective. I'm just going to bring it closer to home, to Africa, because we are all Africans here, I believe. According to Chamais 2000, in Africa, the informal sector as a whole is estimated to account for 60% of all urban jobs and over 90% of all new urban jobs. And when we look at the UN has estimated 52 million people, 52% of the world living in urban areas. So, and in 2050, they're estimating more people to actually be living in cities. Bear in mind, with more people in cities, this kind of urban development or urban informalization, it will increase. Because then the informal sector won't be able to absorb all the people. So there's no way we can go away with informalization. People that will move to the cities don't need jobs that they can afford living with. As well, when we look at informalization, most of the people in it are women. People use, many scholars and people that are against informalization, they argue that this is a bad thing for women. But then what must they do? Because then that's the only thing they get food from. According to the International Labour Organization, informal traders in African countries for which data is available contribute 85 and 99% of total employment in trade, and between 46 and 70% of total value added in trade. However, in most African countries, other than Muslim countries, women represent at least 50%, if not more of the total traders. So with women, we know that when a woman is providing, she doesn't only provide for herself. She provides for the whole community, they provide for households. So we need to look at it in that context, that the strength doesn't come in creating jobs, but then the strength comes in creating jobs that sustain many people in households. For instance, children, there are husbands that are not working. As well, Levin stated that researchers demonstrated that women in the informal sector are more likely than men to spend their income on household needs. However, one must argue that from these statistics, informal economy helps individuals make ends meet and can be a greater tool in alleviating poverty, especially in an African context and amongst women. Paul Cicciello and Michael Rogan, they did a paper this year, And there's so much conversation going on that this doesn't help in poverty alleviation. But in this gentleman, Paul and Michael, they've seen that even though they don't, informality doesn't contribute as much as the formal sector or social protection services, but then when looking at the poverty line, informality brings them closer to the poverty line. So if it continues, it actually put them above the poverty line. But then another strength that we need to understand is that informality helps continents like Africa to have a different trajectory to development, which does not follow a developmental model based on only the West bureaucratic societies. Most of the people arguing against informality are Western countries. And informality is something that is existing in developing countries. So we get those ideas from them that informality is not right, it's not right for us. But in informality, I can assure you, it is good for us. However, one must mention that the strengths to this trajectory will be of addressing problems from a grassroots, unlike solutions imposed on African countries, such as structural adjustment programs that never worked. Instead, they have left people worse off. We know that with the formal sector, trajectory from the West, they impose things on us, but they never work. So with informality, in African economies, if you take informality from the bottom, it teaches us that, well, to alleviate certain things in a country, we have to look at the people that are struggling. Because in developing countries are not developing countries without their people. So informality helps us for the people at the bottom to be taken care of. So it's much more of a bottom-up approach instead of a top-down approach. Moreover, it must be mentioned that another strength to the informal sector is that it helps in many sectors. The informal sector is very diverse. You can incorporate it in anything. But then Vishnu states that the urban informal economy everywhere supplies food, housing, transport, education, health, and other basic services, mining, manufacturing, and engineering, and trade at every level, including transactional commerce and foreign exchange. When looking at transport, one can mention of the taxi industry. Reuters made a report that the South African taxi industry is estimated to contribute over 50 billion to the South African economy. Colleagues and arguers, this is our staggering numbers. So, Mr. Majosi, think about that before you present us. Thank you.
I see that was a challenge, was like Eta Majosi. Well, without much further ado, we're going to have Mr. Majosi, I believe, presenting the arguments against this being a sign of strength of our economy. Please, introduce. Sorry, it's Ms. Chetty. Please, thank you.
Okay, as Chen states, the economic relations of production, distribution, and employment tend to fall at some point of the continuum between the pure formal relations, for example, the regulated and protected at one pole, and pure informal relations, which is unregulated and unprotected. At the other hand, with many categories between, depending on the circumstances of workers and units, are known to move with the varying ease and speed along the continuum and to operate simultaneously at the different points on the continuum. Consider, for example, the informal and formal business in the same industry compete on unequal paying fields because of the different costs of labor and taxes, resulting in insufficient allocations of resources in the economy. Moreover, the formal and informal ends of the economic sector are often dynamically linked. For instance, many informal enterprises have production or distribution relations with the formal enterprises, supplying inputs, finished goods or services, either through direct transactions or subcontracting agreements. Also, many formal enterprises hire wage workers under informal employment relations. For example, many part-time workers, temporary workers, and home workers for formal enterprises through contracting or subcontracting arrangements. From the recent research findings and official data, two stylized global facts emerged about the segmented informal sector, informal economy. The first fact is that there are significant gaps in earnings within the informal economy. On average, employers have the highest earnings, followed by their employees and other more regular informal wage workers, own account operators, casual informal wage workers, and industrial outworkers. The second is that around the world, men tend to be represented on the top of the segment. Women tend to be overrepresented in the bottom segment. And shares of men and women intimidated segments tend to vary across the sectors and countries. Thank you. I'll hand over to my colleague, Majosi.
So it's funny, enthusiasm. Karina actually, excuse me, the way she loves the topic, she had gotten ahead of herself, I'm sure. Yeah. We're going to give now Andries a chance to respond to some of the arguments you made. Just for the viewers and the audience, we note that Andries is alone in this, so he's been given allocation for 2 speakers. Please, Mr. Macham.
Thank you again, Ms. Dr. Boyce. Ms. Chetty, I've taken note of your arguments. However, I must say that I heard you say that men are overrepresented in the informal economy. Men are overrepresented everywhere. Women have been struggling in so many sectors in the world, so it's not only in the informal sector. But then, Karina, I would like to acknowledge your argument on earnings, but we must not shy away from the fact that these disparities in earnings are also found in the formal sector. If we look at the case of South Africa, Statistics South Africa has shown that there are disparities in the formal economy, especially amongst black women who are at the bottom in most sectors of the economy. However, we must not overlook the positives of the informal sector, informal economy, by only looking at the earning gaps which are found in many sectors in the world. Also, you made a point about irregularities in the informal sector, and I know Mr. Majosi also agrees with you with the fact that, because I've spoken to him before, and he's of the fact that the informal economy is not regulated. But then this is a good point that you have made. But then bear in mind, I don't condone any crime. But the informal sector has never been given a chance to be recognized as a positive sector, or a sector that is contributing to the economy. Hence, to this day, there are no regulations to it. We need to recognize the sector which Newworth wrote a book about the informal sector, and I'll highly encourage the audience to look at to have a read at it. It's one of the good books. It's titled Stealth of the Nations, and in this book he terms informalization as a superpower, as an independent, and I totally agree with him. However, by recognizing the informal sector, we need to concentrate on making policies that incorporate the sector so that we'll be able to put proper regulation measures in place. I must also note that we are preaching illegality, informality, but we are forgetting the illegality and exploitation that the formal sector is doing to the people. In Africa and other parts of the world, the environment, the people, and the development of many countries are being exploited, and there's a lot of illegality happening in them. The formal sector that we argue for, that we see as a superhero, is doing what it's doing to the people. We never recognize it. We never recognize it. There are a lot of criminal activities that happen in it. One can mention of activities found in the formal sector. For instance, the staying house. There were criminal activities that happened there, yet there are regulations to them. What about secrecy jurisdictions and economic development in Africa? Sarah Brecken has argued that in many of her papers, she states that this secrecy jurisdictions secrecy jurisdictions, which come in the form of development institutions and at times as companies that are aiding developing nations, are often doing this as a way to avoid taxes using the countries they are aiding as tax havens. However, through this practice of tax havens, billions are lost in those countries, as these countries do not benefit from the investment or businesses provided to them. And then those billions that are lost are billions that can help the informal sector, which there's not much more money that is lost in the informal sector. However, I'd highly acknowledge your argument as well on gender disparities, as everywhere in the formal sector, they are much more as everywhere in the informal sector, they are much more complex than the informal sector. The gender disparities are very complex in the formal sector, but then when you're bringing it to the informal sector, they're not that complex. All right. Before I close, I'd like to tell you that we should not forget the strength of the informal economy, which lie in competitive advantage, offer goods and services at a low price, flexibility and convenience, independence to it, shock absorber during times of joblessness. It's there to help people to manage life. The importance of the informal economies is embedded in its teaching, one of which is resilience, as people empower themselves by being self-reliant. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Andres. In amongst the statistics and the notables mentioned, I just want to say for our audience, as well as for the viewers out there, we are not making allegations against any particular personalities. The scandals which Mr. Mutau has mentioned regarding stand-up, etc., they're all in the public domain. So please, I don't think we have any insurance clauses which cover, this making public allegations. However, this is material that is available in the public domain. We're going to have Mr. Majosi now, who is going to rebut some of the arguments which Andres has made. Please, use it.
All right. Informal economy contributes nearly 52% of the national GDP, according to Statistics 2016, and its labor force estimates over a quarter of South African labor market. However, this sector has a reflection of deprivation of secure labor work below the health and safety standard outlined by the Department of Labor and the South African laws. Employment in the informal sector is not clearly defined. Employment relations does exist, but in most cases, it is not clear who the employer is and what right the worker has, or even who is responsible for securing those rights. Clearly, this is exploitation. Second, even though a taxi driver is employed and paid, but it may not be clearly defined who is the employer, the family who the tax belongs to, the wife who collects the money every day, or and records the daily duties, or the husband who pays the driver even though he works in Joburg. Second, most of the informal enterprises tend to overlook and violate government policies such as gender policies, disability policies. For example, 37% of employment in 2008 belonged to women. However, when you look at the demography of South Africa, you can see that women are more than men in the population. Clearly, this is underrepresentation. Okay. Thirdly, the informal employees are wage earning with no standard rates. For example, paid by the number of taxis we have washed or deliveries you have made in one day, which illustrate that it is impossible to determine the real size or value of the informal economy. In other words, the value we attach to the informal sector is clearly false and romanticized. And also, there has been problems of child labor. When you look around you, in most cases like the taxi industry, you will see the car washers, the people who wash cars for taxi drivers, who normally give direction to the commuters. Those, in most cases, those are children who live on the streets. I'm sure that no one can clearly tell me the age of those people, how old they are. According to the South African law, you have to be over 18 in order to qualify as a worker or to work in the South African economy. Okay. Secondly, I have to give praise to my brother on saying that informal sector or informal economy is a new strategy towards development, which is show African new approach. However, I'm not from the Western notion, which will define that it always suppresses and always blames the informal economy. But even though the informal economy does symbolize new approach towards African development, this approach is uncontrollable, unregulated nature is worrying, since it usually contradicts the local government laws, policies, and, for example, let me make an example of a non-compliance tax culture, which causes problems in policy making. Government is left to have to make two policies which will accommodate the formal sector and policies which will accommodate the informal sector, which clearly define the unfairness to the formal sector, which pay rent, which pay tax fees, which pays everything. However, the informal sector pays nothing, and also which refuse to be regulated and follow policies. And also the diversity and the size and distribution, I will mention. The unstructured and flexibility nature of the informal markets make it costly and difficult for government to regulate and enforce regulation procedures. Thus, the government is left with few options. One of them is to eliminate or turn a blind eye towards the informal operators. Two, in 2016, I will make an example. In 2016, there was a strike in one of the informal sectors, the so-called Zamazamas, the small-scale miners who mine our resources, refuse to pay tax, refuse to follow government procedures, and in turn smuggle these diamonds outside the country, smuggle these gold outside the country, platinum, etc. In 2016, according to the Chamber of Mine, estimated that Zamazama made 7 billion worth of diamond smuggled outside the country. But this report found that the Zamazamas used their profits for smuggling guns, human trafficking, drugs. However, there was a researcher, Otto Lidwaba, from Wits University, who suggested that the legalization and introducing new mining licenses that are affordable maybe can assist these miners. However, the violent nature of this business is still questionable, as in most cases the violence and fights usually break out between two rival groups, just like in taxi industry, just like in any informal business, and government is forced to intervene. So when things go wrong, government must intervene. When things go right, government should stay away and not interfere. Just like I've made an example of the so-called road accident fund. State SA outlines that 85%.
About a minute, please.
Or 85% of the accidents are caused by taxis, involve taxis. That's a fact. But when you look at the taxi industry, it has no medical insurance. It has no funeral insurance. It provides almost nothing for safety and security. And when you look at the road accident fund, it pays nearly 110 billion in the last 5 years of medical claims, insurance claim to who? The taxes. So are you telling me that government should not interfere when you are costing the government? The government should stay away. The government should not interfere. I think this is question. Thank you.
I'm sure the audience is bristling with questions. Right. But before we do, just a side note. Not coming on either side of the debate, mind you, but I think we have to clearly distinguish between informality and illegality. It might be a bit, I would say, I'm not meaning to accuse our debaters of being underhanded, but this association between informal versus illegal, I think we'd be clear that informal does not mean illegal. Okay. All right. Please do, as a qualification afterwards, Mr. Majosi. But while we listen to Mr. Majosi explain how he is actually not falling into that trap of using it as synonymous with illegality, if I would ask just 3 hands for questions, please. Please, any questions? Sorry, please, Mr. Majosi, if you could explain us what exactly you meant, please.
What I meant is that informality and informal businesses or informal economy exist in 2 ways. Some of it can be legal by the goods or the product. So it means the good itself can be an illegal good, but how it is traded can be illegal. Or the good itself can be illegal, but how it is traded, it is in the informal business, it is run in a formal way, in a informal manner. So just like prostitution, for example. Prostitution is mostly, it's immoral for most people. Yes, but it is a business. People are making income. You have to acknowledge it is a business because you gain something, you gain money. And it is an informal business because it is unregulated. So it does qualify as informal.
If I may, what I was just trying to get at is illegal businesses can be formal.
Yes.
So syndicates of human traffickers
Yes.
are alleged to run our prostitution rackets.
Yes.
So it's very formal, but it's an illegal business. Right? Likewise, just to try and bring out that distinction. Please.
Just like a tavern.
Okay.
Just like a tavern. Tavern is given a license to operate during these hours. But how somehow along the line, beyond the underlying factors in the society that we live in, you'll find out maybe some of the goods are not bought in a formal market. So they may be even illegal goods how they bought. They're like illegal tobacco smuggling. Where is that sold? It may be even these businesses which we think they're formal. So
I'm sure Mr. Machao has something to
there
say.
is a relationship.
Yeah. Illegality and informality, your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts are that with informality, most of the time, people like Majosi don't look at the illegality. You spoke about Zamazamas. The mining sector is only in the northwest. You don't look at it from a broader point of view. What about
17 billion is everywhere. That's our good. And minerals are our #1 resources in this country. You cannot say platinum, diamonds, gold. We should not even consider it as a priority. That is a priority for the whole country.
If you can just bring in members of the audience now, please, quickly. So we've got Pandile. Lubisani? Do you have it? Okay. We've got Pandile. Another hand, please. Zintle. And we'll take one more question in this round. And Onke. Okay. Please, Pandile.
Hey, sir. How's it going? I think, first and foremost, thank you guys for the different viewpoints that you brought to the table. It actually made us look into this thing in a more different way. I think for me, I'd like to know what are the determining characteristics of whether or not the informal economy is a sign of strength or weakness. Because earlier you made an example about the taxi industry. The taxi industry has very dire conditions for the workers. They have very little or limited job security. So when you look at development and when you look at the economy, whether it's the informal economy is contributing for the good of the people or not, if a person does not have job security, cannot be able to get a loan, to do whatever, they don't have anything they can use as a contingency plan, they don't sign contracts. You can, as in the taxi industry, you find 12-year-olds, 15-year-olds being Oscar in the taxis. That's wrong on so many levels. It contravenes the Child Acts. It contravenes so many acts in South Africa, but it's still perpetuated, and as Mr. Majosi had pointed out. So what exactly is it that we look at when we say this sector is a sign of strength?
So I think it's for Mr. Machal. I'm sorry, Zinhle, please.
I just wanted to ask Ms. Chesi and Mr. Majosi that as Andrews was saying earlier, that people are benefiting from the informal sector. What then should be done? Like, if you're saying these things shouldn't be done, like people should not involve themselves in informal economic activities, then how will they support their families, as Andrews was saying?
I think actually, you don't mind, Andres? Okay, we'll give Andres a go at that one as well. Just for the benefit of our audience, South Africa is projected to go between 0.5% and 1% for the next, at least the next 3 years. So that's a definite challenge. When our formal economy is not growing, what do we do? Thank you very much for that, Zinhle. Please, okay?
Oh, yes, I think my question goes to Andrews as well. Maybe I might be confusing the whole point of the informal sector and illegality, but you mentioned that the informal sector ensures that goods and services are provided at a low price. And I was once watching a documentary where 2 kids died in informal settlements because there's this one guy who works with electricity, and he says he is providing a business of illegally connecting electricity to people's houses, and they pay him at a low price. So do you not think that the informal sector opens up to this illegality? And yes, that is basically my question.
All right, thank you. So lest we be accused of any gender bias, we're going to start actually with the female question, and we're going to get a woman to answer it. Okay, so please, Karina, what should be done?
Okay, there should be more rules and regulations put into place because women are working in sweatshops and they're being exploited. For example, remember back in 2005 when Nike was accused of, in China, they were exploiting workers where they were working for long hours and being underpaid, like $12 a day. So, and also like our celebrities like Beyonce and Kim Kardashian are also exploiting the people in the informal sector. So I think that better rules and regulations should be put in place, and people should become more aware about the dangers of working in the informal sector. Because
but if I may, I think if I can just, the audience happy with that answer?
No.
Our economy is not growing. What should be done? It's preaching to people. Please, Mr. Majosi, perhaps you could elaborate.
I think that it's more of the nature of the informality that makes it hard for government to even enforce procedures. For an example, the informality is so flexible in such a way and so unstructured in such a way that for you to put a policy in place, it will be a waste of time. You cannot regulate a street vendor who sell here and sell there tomorrow. You can not regulate a taxi that in most cases they are so that doesn't even have like a document to say this is how much I made. If you want to make maybe a policy to say pay tax, he will tell you no, I made 10 rand last time. I didn't make 20 rand. There is no document to prove it. There are no transactions in most of these cases. You know, so it is so bad in that way that the only way is like in the taxi industry. And in the taxi industry, government took an approach that they must regulate themselves, they must formalize themselves in their own, like if you have seen like associations, this is an association, all of them in under one body, and the body must then determine the level and the standard of working environment, maybe the rules and procedures, where to report to, who is responsible for what. So they will have their own mini laws somewhere down there, and then government can look at them by looking and assessing these laws, which are drawn by the association there. For example, even a labor broker is informality, is a subcontractor in most cases.
Well, thank you for that. We'll move on though. I do still feel it's letting the government policymakers off the hook. But anyway, we'll have sorry, Onke's question.
Onke's question. But then before I answer Onke.
And then we'll answer Bandile last, because I see you had your hand up twice, so I'll just ask you to elaborate on the comment.
Onke, in terms of goods and services making them cheaper, imagine yourself in a village, one Ongoma, for that matter, and in the town it's only in, let's say here in Durban. You're gonna pay if you need something like onions or anything. You're gonna pay twice as much to go and get them, because you're gonna pay the taxi fee and then for you the money for you to get them. But then when you have a lady there in Kwanongoma in the village, it makes it cheaper for you, because then the lady can go and get them in a bulk and then sell them for you cheaper, so you don't have to pay much more. So look at it that way. And in terms of people dying in the informal economy, I don't want to argue against that. There's such cases that have been reported, but then it's partly because of policies that have been created in the world. They haven't looked at the informal sector. It's just the thing that is bad. So we haven't even given it a try. So that's why such things are happening.
So if you could just Bandile's comments, which were addressed to you as well, please. Bandile will get to you after. Yeah.
Bandile, as well, for you, I know you spoke of the regulations for taxi drivers, DIA's conditions. I do acknowledge that as well. But then think of it, what will happen to them? What will happen to these people if they are not getting that 50 rand to put food on the table? Must we leave them to die? Because then obviously if they are not participating in that activity of bringing that little money every day, they won't get any money.
Can I comment?
Please, yeah, isn't that a bit glib considering that we're in the middle of a strike today for a national minimum?
We need to understand.
Sorry, just people just.
All right. We need to understand my friend here. My friend is coming in from a capitalist perspective. When you are agreeing that informal economy is a strength, you are assessing by money. One thing. You are looking at money, how much they are making. So it is a strength. But when you look at other things, the health standard, the safety standard, all the other things that comes at the cost of this, you will assess that it is not true. For example, he's talking about the price. He's saying the price is cheaper. Yes, that price must be cheaper, but who determines the price? It is the owner. What can you do to negotiate the price? There is no negotiation. You know, so people are vulnerable there. People are like, who determine, if you want to complain about the price in a taxi, who can you complain to? there's no one. But if you can complain on Shoprite, you know there's an office somewhere. You know there's government is in charge. You know who to speak to. So there's no representation there. But in this side, you do have a representation.
I'm just going to, for those who ask questions, that is like you're satisfied with the answers, we're just going to move on to the next batch of questions. And just for a bit of context, we're in South Africa at the moment. We're in the midst of a national strike. One of the reasons for striking is a national minimum wage of 20 rand per hour. That's occupying the topic of debate in social and policy circles at the moment. Sepupepo, Ngisani, and Ntobeko. Okay.
I just want to hear your guys' views on the government's take on recognizing the informal economy, especially our government, the KZN government. It went as far as developing the informal economy policy around 2011-2012. This was done by the Department of Economic Development, Tourism and Environmental Affairs. And this policy lays guidelines for the provision of better working environment for the informal traders, especially providing trading areas, food stalls, and also providing licenses for people who partake in the informal industry, and as well as making sure that it makes provisions for consumer protection against illegal goods and services. So what is your take on the government's acknowledgement of this sector?
So is that addressed to both sides or to
We can.
Okay.
I did some
thank you.
work on that.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much. Josie will field that first. You're welcome to comment on that, Andres. And please, Ntobeko. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, group which is against the motion.
Yes.
Given that South African labor market is characterized with the highest and growing unemployment rates, and given that it is also difficult to start a formal business given the capital constraint, is it not better than nothing to allow those people, informal entrepreneurs, to actually trade in an urban area? I learned that the counterclaim or argument you made was about exploitation. But remember, in the labor markets, that the labor, which is us, we go there willingly, and then we offer ourselves, we offer our skills. Then the employers will actually offer the wage. It is us. It is not compulsory actually to work there. It is us who say, okay, I am willing to work for this wage. The main question then is that it is not better than nothing to allow them to trade in there.
Wow. Okay. Thanks, Ntobeko. And please, Ngisani. Sorry, sorry, please.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. For me, I have maybe two things that just caught my attention. The first one is that, yes, indeed, the informal is not so bad. It gives people, it's afforded an opportunity to put bread on the table and all that stuff. But now I have a concern. When a business is not regulated, it's freedom from the government. You know, I feel my biggest concern, I feel like the more it grows, and the more it will be harder, it is getting harder to control. For example, we had that national strike of the textile industry that just shut down the whole road, because that's how powerful these people have become, that they see themselves even to be able to be above the law to a certain extent. Last year here in Lukas-10, where the incident where buses were interrupted by a textile industry, that I heard that they wanted maybe to come and put in their tenders or something within the university, because they are seeing themselves growing to be superior. Because I feel like there's too much liberty because there's no policy. And I do not agree with Mr. Bacho's statement that there cannot be policy. I feel like we are educated. We are young. Yes, policy is hard to formulate, but the policy should come into place to regulate. Otherwise, we are having a crisis Even in terms of their employees, they have no retirement fund, no medical whatsoever. They can be fired anytime. Child labor is a problem. The educational system in that industry, it doesn't matter. There's no personal development of their staff people. So I feel like yes, it is helping on a small scale, on a short-term basis, but the people it is helping more are the people who are benefiting, the owners and the entrepreneurs. But the development of the people who work for them, they are not gaining much in a long-term scale.
I think those are very damning accusations, against Mr. Machao. Right. I definitely, Mr. Machao, I think you've got your hands cut out for you. If I could ask, though, is the group that is actually, that's a sign of weakness, if you could field the two first questions from our two colleagues, and then we'll leave Mr. Machao to ruminate over those allegations. Please. Karina?
Okay. The first question was what has government done? So what it means, what has government done in terms of policies, in terms of trying means to regulate this so-called business? Well, government is on three levels. On a national level, government has tried so much. There was in 2013 March, yes, there was a business licensing bill which was passed, which clearly states that for every business, small or otherwise, doesn't matter the scale, that business needs to be stated, registered, and licensed by the state. On a national level, government does acknowledge that the informal sector does exist. And government is trying, even the laws that are passed, policies that are there, small business, enterprise, even the department clearly states that it's acknowledging that there is this other side. But on a provincial level, there have been those few attempts, like in Free State, there was a OFS, which was mostly for township businesses to register them. All of them, they did that successfully. But in terms of in continuation, they couldn't do it. You can't have businesses which have no transaction. You can't just go around. Yeah. But the challenge is there on a local level, because the local government, such as the municipality is there and is responsible for zoning. You have to zone these people. You have to plan the allocate them. And it was so challenging that they do not want to pay rent. They do not want to pay tax. Yet you have to allocate a space for them. What are you saying about the other business which does pay tax, which abide by your rules as the government? So the contradiction comes in there, even with the police, the policing department, that they are forced to enforce policing and remove them.
Sorry, Mr. Majosi, just I thank you for the breadth of your knowledge that you've displayed here, reading up on all the sector. However, I just want to ask though, all of these policies seem like they're we need to put you into place, we need to regulate, we need to police. Have there anything tried where you actually offer them benefits to being formalized? Have any policies been tried like that? Because I'm sure if there are businesses that realize there are these benefits to being formalized, I'm sure that many of them would. It's not like they don't want to pay rent, I'm sure, but they just want to everything for free, as you're implying it.
Well, I have to be fair. It is stated that the government in most cases, like on Zamazama case, they have stated informal mining.
Yes.
The one complaint that they had was that the mining license is so high beyond affordable. So it's the entry point, the entry standard is so high that you can't even reach that. So I have to agree.
But there isn't an indictment against our policymakers and not the poor, and not, maybe I'm sorry for romanticizing, I strike it off the record, and not our informal, traders, informal operators.
I guess there is an indictment on that part. There is an indictment.
And then in Sobeko's comment? Please, Karina, if you want to, yes.
Okay, you said that it's better than nothing to work in the informal sector, but isn't it dangerous? Like, how many women and children lives are put into danger. Like some of the conditions that they work in is unhygienic.
But remember, we noted that it is not compulsory.
Yeah.
They choose to go there just because they are fighting two remaining issues, poverty and unemployment. So rather than putting a barrier and saying, no, do not trade there, you rather maybe afford them a chance to trade while you are addressing the main issues that we are complaining about being so hard actually to assess them or to track them. While you are assessing those policies, allow them to find a solution for these issues.
So it's an acknowledgement of desperation.
Yeah, it's a sign of
What?
desperation.
Yeah.
But that desperation comes at a cost. That's what we say. It comes at a cost. And in most cases, the cost is criminality, violence, and you even can get killed in most cases. Taxi industry, Zamazamas, they die underground. You know, fights break there in the opposing parties. You know, that's what happened, that's the nature. Even the goods that are being sold there, the health and safety standard, if it is not ensured, it means what you are buying can be dangerous to you.
Now, that's the illegality we should talk about.
Yes.
If we get somebody in the interest of time, if we could get Andres to address Ndumiso's comments. Okay, yeah.
If I
And
address-
please go ahead.
In Dumiso's comments, I must acknowledge Pepelo for speaking about the Durban government. Because the Durban government has realized that informality is here to stay. It's growing. In South Africa, when we look at it, the rate that it's growing, it's very big. In Dumiso, in South Africa, you spoke about taxis, thinking that they are taking control. They are above the law. Any protest in South Africa is above the law. So you know, in South African context, that's how we strike. When we strike, everything shuts up. And with them doing that, it's a way of showing that here we are, we're not benefiting from the formal economy. We take us seriously, because that's the only way. If there were policies in place to help these people, then we wouldn't see such things. So we need policies to help these people, because then they are also in dire need. It's not a choice for them to do what they're doing. And I'm surprised that you come and say they are above the law. The very same people are the people that take you from town to here, which is what they're
I think it might be an easy way out there for us. Yes. Okay. Just in the interest of time, though, we're going to have a final round of questions. With the permission of the House, if we could get some more ladies. I know we don't have the men to dominate the discussion. So please, Mbebo, Marhle, right? Kabisile? Yes, as well. And then I know we have a visitor here today. If we could give him a hand. And encourage him to participate. Please, you're welcome. I'm sorry for not inviting you earlier, but you're welcome to ask a question, make a comment, or anything. So if you feel like you'd like to, please go ahead. The floor is yours. Sure. Thank you. Please come again. Watch online. Please.
I'm not sure if I got it right, but she said that informality happens in developing countries. If this is the case, are you insinuating that there's something, what is it that developed countries are doing right that they don't have informal? So if that is true.
Yeah, but most of it, I'm not saying it's not there in developed nations. It is there, but then at a lower rate. With developing nations, bear in mind we have high unemployment, and we're still trying to move to bigger growth, bigger GDP growth, and everything. So that's why we have much more informality. I don't know if I answered it.
But I think what Muthiwa says is actually what's interesting is that are we saying that developing countries, because of unemployment, it gives us license to, dare say, exploit? Am I correct? That's what you were saying. It's like, should be in developing countries, should be, okay, we recognize that there's a certain element of desperation, so we should actually permit it. I think this is, am I correct? Okay. Sorry, but we'll get back to you. I know we have Andres here on his own, so shame. Please, let's not exploit his goodwill. Please, Martley.
Okay, I don't have a question, I just have a point of correction on your normal example. So I just wanted to correct you about that the goods sold in informal sectors, especially in rural areas, because that is an assumption that they're cheap. I just want to correct you, they are not cheap. Goods in informal, especially rural areas, are not cheap compared to the informal sector, maybe in an urban area. They're actually more expensive.
And we'll let our last who was, mind you, for the benefits of the class and the audience, who was from that area of the province. Right, Kabisile. Please, so
I understand that informal settlement creates jobs it creates jobs, yes. But what I want to know is, have you thought of what does informal trade has in relation of city attraction and informal trade performance, particularly the street vendors? What are the negative impacts that it has on formal trade performance? How does it affect trade performance? You can see when you go to West Street, there is a lady next to ShopRite selling veggies. How does that affect ShopRite?
well, I thank you for that comment from our home girl from Ngoma. I do think that West Street's name has been changed as well. Sorry. Will never change. Okay, so we are going to have it in Andres, if you would, right? And we're going to ask Karina and Majosi, mind you, to just have a final word, closing arguments after Andres responds to these, I think, 3 questions.
But in an urban setting, the reason the prices are lower than those in the village, it's a competition. There's many of them, so prices will be lower so that they can food on the table. So that's the reason. In regards to your question with the ShopRite and an informal trader next to ShopRite, well, it shows the disparities, the desperation that and change that needs to be done in South Africa. I mean, if you look at it in a bad way, it doesn't really help. Because then you can, in other cases, the informality that you're saying that it shows badness of the country. In Cape Town, they're incorporating it. They have gussie tours there where they'll take traditional tourists on gussie tours. So in other instances, it works. It reflects the good side of the country. In other cases, it doesn't reflect the good side. So what you term as the good side.
So then, I think we got to the end of the question and answer session. What we'll have is we'll have the group. We give them we'll invite them this time to speak first. Even after since our questions and answers, why should we still believe that this is a sign of weakness for the economy? Please, a speaker from the first group. Just 2 minutes, a closing argument. But why should we still believe? You don't have to take up this invitation. But just before we vote, just as the clinching argument before we vote.
As we outlined, the lady was asking about why the price is not being cheap in rural areas. They are cheap, but they're not so cheap. It's not really the prices that we are worried about. Even the standard that the cost that it comes with, the procedures followed to put the price there.
Sorry, thanks for that answer. But I just meant just a wrapping up, closing the summary of your argument for 2 minutes, so that we can go to vote.
Okay, as a summary, we believe that informality or informal economy is a sign of weakness, as we have outlined. Most of it comes with a sense of illegality, unregulated policies which they follow, and in most cases, unethical morality which does exist there. And most of these businesses, they become breeding grounds for crime and criminality. As there are no paperwork, and they are law to themselves, if I can put it that way. So it's a state within a state. So we believe that this is a sign of weakness. But we have to acknowledge that even though there is a sense of income, but the extent which that income is received is quite higher than the income itself, because government is left with even more burden to pay and compensate what these people are failing to do, like in road accident fund, which cost government billions.
Yep.
You know, the crimes, the violence that exists there. So honestly,
Thank you for that. Thank you for all those abundant, like you made it abundantly clear, you know, the nature of, like, you know, why we should not believe that. So thank you for that. Final words from Andres. 2 minutes, please. You might take the podium if you so wish. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Boris and Mr. Majosi and the audience. But then what I'd like to say is that informality is here to stay. Rather we take it seriously, because then it's what's going to shape the development of Africa or African economies. You have pointed out different things, different issues within informality, but then I believe that if we look at it and implement policies, informality can actually be what we need as Africans. So from me, is that let's just from us as Africans, you should really acknowledge this informality, because then it is going to help us in the long run. So yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you to all our speakers for a very enlightening debate. I'm sure that as are you, you're a lot more, not only clearer on the nature of the form market, but you're a lot more confused, a lot less clear now, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, yes.
Can I just get one clarification?
Please. But can we do it after we're going to vote? We're going to say goodbye to. Oh, you think it's going to influence the vote?
Yes.
Should we allow him to?
Yes.
Should we allow him to?
I would like to understand.
Please, yeah.
What informs informality and formal? Is it the absence of policy? Because now I'm getting confused. If we politicize it, does it become formal or does it still become informal? What is formal and what is informal?
That's a question.
If we.
Since it's not counted in terms of the country's GDP and all that, that makes it informal. So if because in the formal sector, obviously they'll look at what they're contributing to economic growth and everything of that nature. But then with the informal sector, it's informal because of it contributes nothing towards the growth of the country. So they say.
Thank you. We are going to go now we're going to say goodbye to our audience. We're going to say goodbye while we go to vote. Please send us your comments online, vote, and remember to stay tuned to our YouTube channel, where next week we will be discussing trade, export-led growth in Africa, on whether we're for or against the motion. Goodbye to everybody from sunny South Africa, as we say. Bye-bye. Until next time.